Well, good morning. It's nice to be with all of you. Appreciate the introduction by Johnny, and also thanks Sonia for getting you the information so you can follow along with me in the presentation. I was contacted a few weeks ago to come and present to you, and I had never heard of your group before, so it's been interesting to learn that such a group exists and that you share those resources amongst all the counties in Utah. And that's not too much unlike the church, where we are self-insured, and so we rely on putting money aside and taking care of our own needs as much as we can. As I was talking with Sonia about what I could present and learning a little bit more about you, I found out that you're from all over the state. You're in various different roles and facilities, some at the maintenance level. In the larger counties, you probably have a much larger staff where you don't have to do everything on your own. But it's quite a large field when you look at what is facilities management. And it's important that we understand a little bit more about different concepts that are going on in the profession today. I also want to caution you about what you put on the internet. I asked Sonia how she found out about me, like why did she request me to come here, and a few months ago, our chapter of IFMA, International Facility Management Association, put on we have a newsletter, and there's a spotlight. Every month we spotlight a member, and I volunteered to just be spotlighted, and I was on the board, so it was easy, and so we just put something together, and I guess it's out there on the internet. So she found me, and I'm grateful to be here. As Johnny mentioned, he's already gone through this brief resume. I have been with the LDS Church for the last 15 years. It's been a great organization to be part of, a very large organization, and we've been doing some exciting things. And I won't pretend to say that what we do is the way that any county does it, or city, or corporate organization for that matter. But I think there are a lot of principles that do transfer. My hope today is that you'll be able to take a few tools and things from what I say and think about your role in facilities and how you might be able to take that to the next level. I began as an analyst in meeting house planning, and this was at a time when the church was looking at how we can better manage facilities. For years they kind of managed them on a very local way, unless you were building a building, and that was done at downtown headquarters. But they wanted to be even better, and so they brought in Bain Company from Boston, Massachusetts, and did a study on how we were managing our facilities. This was about 1997. And they found several things that weren't standard across the organization. They found things that weren't as efficient as they could be. And so through that study, they found a lot of things that we could improve on. And so I entered in a pilot program. And we took two regions of the church, which were the southern part of Utah and the North American Southwest area, and began to implement several things like performance measurements and tracking how we perform. I'll get into that a little bit later. And we also talked about standardization, standards and processes, and doing things the same way so that we could measure our results. That program lasted a couple of years. They also introduced a computerized management system, and then that was eventually rolled out to the entire United States. And I was a part of this group, and we did performance measuring, and I had to fill out a monthly report and distribute that report to all the management, and so that was kind of my introduction into doing things a little bit differently, and starting to apply some things that had only been talked about before as I was going through school. So I did that for a couple of years in terms of looking at our performance, and then also projecting where and when we need to build new buildings and find future sites. Following that, I became the assistant facilities manager of the church office building. Quite a daunting task when you have a 28-story high-rise and you have about 26 different departments, 26 different people to keep happy, and constantly moving. We're always remodeling that facility, improving it. It's now 40 years old. It's a great building. But as you know, buildings don't just sit there, they have to be updated and maintained. Following that, I was asked to be involved in another new group, another new endeavor, which was space management planning. And this is done all over corporate America, but the church had never had a group that did space management, looking at how well we utilize the space we have, and trying to align what space should be used at and how effectively we were using it. So that involved more tracking and reports and things to track our space. And then for the last almost 8 years, I've been involved in the Triad Center, and I'll get to that in a second. And then, as Johnny mentioned, I'm a member of the International Facility Management Association. We have about 200 members, mostly here along the Wasatch Front, made up of professionals, and are any of you a member of that, by the way? Okay, good. It's nice to see a couple of you. But we meet monthly, we interact, we network with one another, and we share knowledge and try to help one another learn more about facility management. And it's a global organization, has I think over 22,000 members around the world, and they have major conferences every year that address topics in facility management. So if you really want to learn more about facility management, they're a great resource. The Certified Facility Manager exam is an intense 4-hour exam, covers various competencies in facility management, and it's a relief to have that over. I'll just leave it at that. Today we'd like to talk about what facility management is, what those core competencies are, so you can understand what your role is within the larger scheme of facility management. I'll break that into some operational aspects as well as strategic. And then we will show you some tools and tactics, some things that I'm aware of, that the church has done, that other companies do, that you might be able to benefit from and improve the way that you're managing the facilities in the counties that you're involved in. And then a little bit about the trends in the future of facility management. Headquarters Facilities Division is part of the Special Projects Department of the church. We are strictly involved in the headquarters facilities, everything that's downtown Salt Lake City, and there's a few other things around the valley that we take care of. This represents 3.5 million square feet. We have 500 or 600 employees, and the bulk of that are about 400 custodians. There's a couple hundred maintenance trades people that are broken into various trades, and then we have administrative staff as well. So it's a very large organization, and our division on its own is bigger than most departments are in the church at headquarters. It takes a lot to take care of all this space. We have about near 100 facilities, I think, large and small. But these are the major ones that you would see downtown. The Triad Center is over here on 300 West, across from the Energy Solutions Arena. I got snapped out of the photo, apparently. The church purchased the Triad Center in 2004. And for 30 years it had been a corporate office space for various tenants. And when the church started announcing plans to redevelop downtown and to expand and rebuild the City Creek, they also announced that they would move LDS Business College and BYU Salt Lake Center to the downtown campus. Originally that was going to be built on an empty parking lot, and then because of cost and time, it was deemed more efficient to renovate the Triad Center for use as education facilities. So in 2006, this building on the corner was the first one completed. This one here is where KSL Television is. And this is the Business College. And the following year, we inhabited the building to the west of that, which is where BYU Salt Lake Center is. So we now have 2 office buildings that were converted into educational use. And I was asked to be the first facilities manager for the church to go to that building and to get those 2 institutions moved in who had been used to doing their own facilities, and then help understand how the church could provide those services to them. So if you ever have a new customer or a new group that comes online or someone that inhabits a new building, that's a bit of a challenge. It's important to manage those relationships. But it's always a and a lot of fun. Every day is different, as you all know. You never know what's going to happen. So what is facility management? I would assume most of you already know the answer because you're doing it. But how many of you grew up, or say you were 12 years old and said, I want to be a facility manager when I get older? Anyone? Okay. I didn't either. It's one of those things that you just fall into. And you think you're doing one job, it's like, oh, and by the way, you are also responsible for facilities. That's kind of how the profession has grown over the years. And I'm the same way. I didn't think I would be doing it, but I knew I had some interest in facilities, and I looked at architecture and things like that. And then it wasn't until I even got to BYU that I knew such a program existed. My dad had been an engineer. I thought I wanted to be an engineer like him. And then I realized that that wasn't for me. And stumbled upon this career in facility management and combined a lot of interesting principles at BYU about business management and technical aspects of facilities. And the most effective people at managing facilities are able to combine those principles. So back when I was in school, this was the existing definition of facility management. The practice of coordinating the physical workplace with the people and work of the organization. It integrates the principles of business administration, architecture, and the behavioral and engineering sciences. So when I would get asked what my major was and what I was doing, I would say I'm a facility management major, and they'd say, well, what does that mean? And then I would give them this definition, and I had it memorized at the time, and it'd still give me a blank stare. And it's tough to explain what we do. Most people take them for granted. As long as everything's working, they don't ever think about who takes care of the facilities. But as soon as there's a problem, you're the first one they call. And it sounds nice. We do all these different things, and I love the integration, but I think it was a definition that was a little bit hard to get people's hands around. And so I think mostly led by IFMA, that definition began to change over the years. And in the later part of the 90s and into the early 2000s, they came up with something that was a little more comprehensive, a little broader than even that definition was. So we start with place. We understand that facility management deals with places. There are buildings, sometimes they are amphitheaters, sometimes they're outdoor gazebos, it might be a park. If we went around this room, I'm sure you have all kinds of facilities that you deal with on a daily basis. Either you work in or you have to take care of. And if we add up all the counties in Utah and all the facilities that we have, I'm sure there's a couple hundred of those, if not more. So we know it's about place and making sure those places are effective for people. Which brings us into the second aspect of facility management. You can't ignore the people. I would like to, and my job would be easier if I didn't have anyone inside my facilities, but it's important that we are there to meet people's needs. That's really why the facility was built. It represents housing a need, whether it's a recreational facility, an office building, one of the utilities, or anything else that you might manage. The people always come first, and we have to make sure they're comfortable and that those needs are met, and they're our customers. And it's important to realize that relationship and make sure if the facility is not working for someone, then it's not really serving its needs. The third thing that facility management integrates is process. And this gets more into the strategic level, which I'll talk about in a minute. But we need to look at how we are managing facilities. They just don't sit there. We all have a process, whether it's good or bad, we all follow one. That might be taking a phone call and going out ourselves to fix a leak. Or it might be undertaking a major new building that's going to be built in your county, and then going through the entire process over a year or two of meeting with architects and contractors, turning the facility over to someone, and getting everything started. There's a process for that. So it's important to realize that we do have processes, and we want to look at the processes that we're using in our own jobs, making sure that we're being effective. The other reason that IFMA went to this model is that, in calling that facility management, is that something else happened, which was technology. Technology has changed even in the last 15 years since I was in school. When we were talking about AutoCAD and maybe some databases that kept track of work orders 15 years ago, now we're talking about building information modeling, where every piece of a building is in a computer database, and you can dimension that and model it in 3D. You can print out, you can assign people to that office space. You can print out components that make up that facility. So there's a lot of technology that's out there in the facility management world that can help us do our jobs more effectively. Now, some of that's way more than any of you will need. The church doesn't use all those things. Most companies can't afford to use all those things. But the tools are there, and when it can be more effective and efficient, then it's a great tool to have, that technology. The other way that technology affects us is in the very facilities we have. Here we have projectors, we have Wi-Fi connections, we have internet connections, we have satellite systems, we have to communicate across facilities. All these things are linked now. Most of you have iPads or phones that you use every day, and those make our jobs much easier. I don't know what we'd do without them. So technology encompasses everything else that we do. And when it doesn't work, sometimes they blame us. So in the church, we're fortunate enough to have a large IT department, so they take care of all the technology. But as they're upgrading and expanding, it always comes back into facilities. Where do we put it? Finding a place to make it work. So here's the new definition by IFMA of what facility management is. It's a profession that encompasses multiple disciplines to ensure functionality of the built environment by integrating people, place, process, and technology. You'll see that technology wasn't even in that definition at all before. So they've even taken things to a higher level, not just thinking about architecture and design and business administration and finance, but integrating all of these things. So the more that you and I can be integrators and manage facilities in an integrated way, the more effective that we can be. Competency seems to be a buzzword these days, whether it's in education or in professions. What is it that we're supposed to know? And facility management's the same way. There are lots of things that we are supposed to know. And when I was going through school, there were only 9 competencies. And they were the first ones that you'll see listed here. And if we could know all of that and be experts in it, we'd be great. We'd be set. Even that was a bit daunting. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, it became apparent that there were a few more competencies that facility managers needed to know. And so those were added. And you probably know that it's important to be prepared for emergencies. Are any of you CERT members in your communities? Okay, a couple. I went through CERT training years ago, and that's emergency response teams. And so it's important that we understand how emergency response works. If a county facility is shut down, doesn't work, and government comes to a halt, we hear about it. Especially when it's on the federal level, we hear about it. And on the local level, our citizens depend on all of us a lot to make sure that those facilities are running and not having problems. And then environmental stewardship and sustainability is also a new thing. I know in Salt Lake City, for example, there's a big focus on that. So every time they build a new building, it needs to be LEED certified, which implies lots of things with energy efficiency, sustainability. And so the new public safety building that they built, we just went on a tour of a month ago, has all these new things that are sustainable and energy efficient, but that's their criteria. Salt Lake City won't build something that doesn't meet those needs. Now, a lot of the smaller counties, cities around Utah, is probably not as big of a concern. But when you're in a larger city, that sensitivity to the environment, to being a good steward, to being a good neighbor is important. And I think that's only going to increase, especially in regards to natural resources. There's always talk in Utah about the wonderful beauties that we have here and how we can manage those resources and not impact the environment and scenery that we have. So I want to put this in a bit more of an illustration. We have the things that you're most familiar with. We operate and maintain buildings. We have technology. We talk about emergency preparedness. We also deal with projects and real estate. Sometimes we have to lease, either we're leasing the building or we're leasing it out to someone. We obviously need to communicate. And so these are things that represent a structure of facility management that I really relate well to. On the side, it shows, these are the 11 competencies. Well, yeah, these are the 11 competencies, by the way. I added 2 from the original illustration that this is taken from. They've illustrated them this way to show that we support business through financial aspects, through project management and real estate. And then we manage on a day-to-day basis the facility. But we're also leaders. We have the opportunity to represent the buildings and facilities that we're involved with. We have an opportunity to explain what it is that we do, how that adds value to the organizations that we're a part of, whether that be a corporation or a county or a city. We add value in the work we do. If you don't see the value that you add to the organization, you're in trouble because you do it. And you need to understand how you're doing that so that you can explain that to other people. The people who are not involved in facilities every day don't always understand that. So we have a real opportunity to be just not managers, but leaders. And sometimes we say, well, it's better to be a leader than a manager. Well, I think there's room for both. Most of the day I'm managing. I'm dealing with the clogged toilet, dealing with the power outage, dealing with parking problems. Those are things that we have to manage. And it takes up a lot of time. But as we understand that there are times also to create vision and to be a leader and to look at what the next step is and how we can be more effective, then we're on our way to being more effective in our roles as facility managers. And also, we don't want to forget that we support the business. We spend a lot of money. Does anyone make money in here at what they do? You're all spending taxpayer dollars, I assume. The church also doesn't make money. I'm in the business of spending money to build and renovate new buildings and to take care of them. And those dollars are few and they're precious, and we have to be careful with them. But we have to make sure that we're aligned with what it is that our purposes are. So we want to be spending money in the right place. So we want to make sure that we're aligned with the business or the organization that you are a part of. To make sure that you are in step and in sync with your those elected leaders that you serve and the people that you serve. So let's look a little bit more into some of what those roles are. First of all, I want to talk about what the operational point of facility management is. These are the types of things that you hopefully think about every day and that people will notice every day. Are we keeping the building clean? Is it well maintained? What's broken next? There's a lot of regulatory compliance, especially in terms of government, the regulations that we have to deal with, safety regulations, fire department, conducting those inspections, making sure that everything's certified and checked on regularly or annually, however often that is. We also need to ensure that people are safe. What are some things that you have? Do you have parks? Does anyone have a park to manage? A couple of people. Kind of just throw out some names of things that you, types of facilities you have.
Fairgrounds, sports facilities, fairgrounds.
Okay. Senior center. Okay.
Libraries.
Libraries, great.
Conventions.
convention centers, okay? Quite a variety of things. And some of these I've heard, you're gonna have events. You have the public coming to the board event, and you have public coming every day. And has anyone dealt with a safety issue? Okay, few. Anyone had an injury claim? Someone got hurt on your property. So those are things that you need to be prepared for, and making sure that people are safe. You're also protecting the asset. I like to think of myself as the cheerleader for the buildings and facilities I have. They sit there and they get used, but sometimes they get abused. Sometimes they get neglected. They're not given enough funding, they're not given the resources we need. People don't see what's wrong with them. And we're eyes and ears of these facilities, and we need to make sure that they're taken care of. When the facility needs something, that needs a new roof, we're the one that has to go to bat for that roof. Until someone notices that it has a problem, you might not have someone above you say, oh, I noticed the roof is bad, you better replace it and here's some money. Usually it works the other way around. You notice that the roof's getting bad, and it's like, if we don't replace it now, in 3 years we're gonna really hate life because we're gonna have lots of leaks and we'll have a lot more problems on our hands. So it's looking out for those facilities and trying to look long-term and seeing that their needs are met. The facilities that we manage after the people are the largest asset that any organization has. There's a lot of money, there's millions of dollars that's represented by the facilities that we manage. And so it's important that we take care of those. Accessibility is important, especially with, and ADA is nothing new, it's been around for 20 years now. Making sure that everyone can use and enjoy the facilities that have been provided. And this one's big, functional, efficient, aesthetic, that's all. That's all that they're asked to do. It has to work, they want it to look good, it has to be efficient, we have to do more with less. So it's important that the facility meets those needs. And then we have to be cost effective on top of that. And work miracles with the money that we do have, especially in government, I imagine. Do any of you have too much money? So that's always a challenge, I'm sure. So that's what we do day to day. Then we also need to think strategically, and this is where it gets tough. I don't spend as much time strategically thinking as I should. But we ought to take some time every day and think about what it is that we're doing and how it impacts everything else. And those would be small decisions from, well, what if we change to LED lighting? Well, that's the new thing. Well, is that cost efficient? How much manpower is it going to take to convert lighting to that? What is our payback period to convert lighting? If you're dealing with the mechanical system in the building, when do we need to replace that boiler or chiller? When does it reach the end of its life? Those are the types of things that we need to strategically think about, not just react to everything. How does it affect space? If we carve out something for another function, does that impact someone else in the organization? What are we expected to do in terms of providing service? What do our taxpayers and constituents expect of us? And what should we provide given the money that we have? Identifying and prioritizing the most important things that we should provide. Thinking, who are the customers? What are their needs? Do you ever think about that? Who is it that we're here to serve? That's what I love about the public sector. One reason I went into public administration as my master's program is that it gives you that sense of we're helping the greater community, we're helping the public, we're helping meet needs of all people. And it's not just about making money. And it's important that we realize, and if you're like me, you're caught in the middle. I have students, a few thousand students that come to my buildings and expect a safe environment. But I also have university administrators I have to please. I have my boss that I have to please. And so when you're in the middle, you get it from both ends. And you have to keep that balance of making everyone happy. Looking at what things cost, what is the impact on people as we make different decisions, and such things as costs. We always think, well, what does it cost to replace this? Well, strategically thinking is like, well, what does it cost not to replace it? What is the long-term risk if something breaks, if an event fails because something's not happening? If we lose cooling to in the data server room, that's the worst thing that could happen. And so you need to look at the cost of doing everything that you're involved in. As well as if you make a decision, well, if I invest in better carpet and it lasts longer, I've actually saved money because we don't have to replace it in half the time. So those are the types of things that you want to think of strategically. So I want to go through various examples of some tools and tactics that we use in managing facilities. I don't think these are anything that is that unique to the church. There are examples that you can find in other companies. If you go to facility management seminars, they get really deep. Has anyone heard of Six Sigma? Okay, a couple heads, probably because of IFMA, you've heard of it. But I can't really tell you what it is, but it's a way of strategically thinking and analyzing. And so you can get really deep into this, but we're not going to get that deep. Historically, I would say that the church used to be this way. This is how we thought of things. We thought, okay, how much budget do I have? Do I have funding or not to do it? What's our policy? What does the city code say, or the county codes and laws say? What do the state regulations say? You're always trying to keep within this box. Does anyone feel like that? Okay, and those are important. Don't want to discredit that at all. And as the church would manage things in the past, sometimes we'd say, oh, I'm sorry, we can't replace that door, we don't have budget for it. And that was the answer. And if you're a customer, if you're the one that occupies a building and you come to a facilities department and says, you know, that door's broken and it really doesn't work and it's letting cold air in, and the answer you get back is, sorry, no budget. That's not a great response. It's not a very good customer service attitude to have. It may be true, but it's still not a great response. Or the other thing that we'll often see is, well, policy says I can't do that. So tough. That's also not a great response. And that may be true. Or there's a law that says you can't. And so a lot of what we do in facility management is trying to bridge that gap between our confines, which is budget, and time, and resources, and what the law says, and what we can do for them, and the expectation that they will have. So there's a big gap there to manage all the time. And that's sometimes what the church was finding that we said to various customers. So as we did this study with Bain Company in 1997, looked at our new processes and how we would be, we really focused a lot more on being customer service driven. And any organization can do this. Any county, any city, any corporation can do this kind of thing. In fact, I think the most successful corporations, because they're very much profit driven and keeping people happy and keeping business, they have to be customer service driven. And you and I, we have an audience that's, for more or better or worse, they're stuck with us. They live there, and you are the entity they have to deal with. They can't just go to the county next door and say, well, I want you to manage my facility. So whether or not they like it, they're stuck with us. So we want to be good. We want to feel that people are getting good customer service as they interact with us, as they call in a work order, as they call in a complaint, whatever it might be, they need to have a good experience. We tried to soften the tone by saying, well, we have guidelines. You know, guidelines, policies, maybe they're the same. But sometimes in guidelines you have latitude. You say, well, as long as it's within this amount of money, or within this time, or I can do these 3 different options for you. These are the parameters I have to work in. That sounds better. That gives them choice. That gives them an understanding of what they can do. Instead of just saying, well, it's this way and there's, you know, my way or the highway. That helps. Also, we're process driven now. And we have to communicate those processes processes to other people. We say, well, this is how it works. If you need new furniture next year, then here's the process you go through. And once people understand that, and they understand your budget cycle, they understand your planning process, then it takes a few years, but they eventually get the program. And they know, okay, I know I'm gonna need furniture in a year, so I better request it now and get that budgeted for. Does anyone have someone that comes to you last minute and says, oh, by the way, I need this? Yeah. And it's like, did you not know that 6 months ago? It's gonna happen, even if you're process driven, it happens to me all the time. But that gives you something to work with. And then we look at performance. Rather than just, well, we got this much money in the bucket, and as long as we use up by the end of the year, we're good. Are we? Was that the right amount of money to use? Did we use too much? Did we use too little? Could we have done it more effectively? And only until you start measuring the performance will that come into place. Kind of following up on this new paradigm, so we have standards that we, oh, sorry.
Yeah, on that last slide,
Yep.
this is a big struggle. I mean, you see the whole picture right here on the slide. How would you prioritize those things?
I don't.
Because I mean, they fight against each other. They fight against each other,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to be customer service driven, you would do anything you can for the customer, right?
I mean, on our side of the house, being who we are, we just want it to work. I don't care how pretty it looks. You know, comfort. But then you have that other side, like you said, the aesthetic side and the customer-driven side.
Yeah.
And so this is a big struggle in the budget process on meeting these parameters. I think this is a great slide.
Well, and you raise a great question. You may not care how it looks. You might just want it to work. You don't care if it's red or green or what color it is, but who are your customers and do they care? So what is the priority, in your county, your organization that you're in? Is it just make sure it's functional? Just make sure it's safe? Or do they want it, is this particular building, if it's the county office, it probably needs to look good, but the restroom in the park may not have to look as good, it needs to be clean. So you have to ask yourselves these questions of what is important.
Well, it's just like building a new building. You've got an HVAC unit, and they may have 5 offices tied to this one T-stat that you're controlling. And who gets in there? Who gets in that office with the T-stat? That's.
Yep.
And then so because you've got different people who like different various ranges of comfort, and it's hard to tell somebody, say, well, put on a coat or wear less. I don't know.
Right.
Depending on where they're at. So it's pretty interesting.
It's true. There's good and bad about new technology. Now that everything's on the computer, and I can look up any room in my building and find out what the temperature is. Well, that's nice, but the bad thing is I have that much control now. So everyone knows they can call and get their individual office adjusted. And then sometimes you have to decide, well, how much latitude do they have? Well, will you adjust it within 3 degrees, or can they have any temperature they want? And again, these are great questions. You have to look at your whole organization, what your priorities are, and you also have to look at each individual facility, what's most important. What you have at a county fairground, I'm sure has different priorities than what you have at a convention center, although they both do events, but they're both very different facilities. Or what you have at the county office, or what you have at the water treatment plant. Water treatment plant probably doesn't, the aesthetics aren't as important as the functionality. But the functionality is critical. So, but if you have processes in place and you have performance and you measure what is most important, then that helps you focus on doing the right things at the right times. I can spend all day picking out carpet colors, or thinking, oh, it'd be nicer if we painted the room this way, but that may not be the best place to put resources in. So again, we're standards-based, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute. We inspect facilities, so we're seeing whether or not we meet those standards, and then we track our performance to see how we're doing. are we meeting requests on time? Are we spending money in the right ways? This is an example slide I've given you. I mean, if I brought the whole binder, well, I actually did, but it's got every category: floors, carpet, ceilings, wall coverings, paint, hardware. Because the church is such a large organization, we have so many buildings around the world, we've put the resources into this to making sure they're standardized. But this is one example, and yours might be simpler if you want to do a simpler method of doing this. But we do have this, so I can go to any room, and I can look at the carpet and rate this room. So if it's a 1, it has no dust, debris, dirt, or removable stains. In fact, this carpet actually looks pretty nice. How old is it?
What, 6 years?
6 years.
5 years?
Okay. It's doing pretty well. There's no tears, you know, there might be a couple specks of paper. And so we rank those things, and our custodians, we ask them to clean to that standard. In fact, my building is clean to a 2.5. So on average, if I was to go in any classroom at LDS Business College or BYU, it's okay if it has a little bit of dirt or dust present. That's fine. That's my expectation level. I do not want to be managing to a level 5 where there's dust and dirt all over the place. And you might have facilities that you want to manage to level 5. It's okay. But it's deciding what it should be. In the church, our temples, they're managed in most places to a 1. We expect there not to be any dust anywhere at any time. But that's impractical to do at LDS Business College. I've got students, for goodness sakes. This is going to be impossible. And we do the same thing for maintenance. So carpet, you know, we want to keep carpet at level 2 as well. But if it's fraying, if the seams are coming apart, then that's indicating, you know, it's probably about time to replace that carpet. You can do these sorts of things, and you probably won't have a whole binder of standards for every little thing, but you might do it building by building, or you might do it just by flooring. You know, you might have a 1 through 3 system. You can determine that. This is thinking strategically of how you should rank things. But if we never think about it, then it never improves, and we don't know where we've been and where we're going. So that's one thing that you could implement is what are our standards, what should they be, and how well are we keeping those standards. This does take some time. We only inspect twice a year. We inspect each other's buildings. So I will go to the church office building, which I don't manage anymore, and inspect them and see how their cleanliness is. And we rank it and put it on a chart, and then we're measured on that performance. We also have replacement standards. So I've given you the example of carpet. I mean, do you just replace carpet because you want to? Do you replace it because you were suddenly given money? Do you replace it because, I mean, there's lots of reasons to replace it. But we have standards that say when to replace it. So again, this protects us. It's like, we'll replace it when it gets to this point. I won't go through all this, you can read about it. But we want to make decisions that are good and not just based on emotion, and not just based on funding, but based on a real process. And then you can tell other people this and explain this is your process and help them understand how you got to the conclusions that you got to. We kind of touched on this already. Our processes protect us. And they help us know what it is that we do, who is involved, what tools are used, and then the results that we should expect when we do that. Let me talk about it this way. Here are just 4 of the processes that we use in the headquarters facilities division of the church. These are like 6 pages, they're outline form, they're quite detailed. But facilities management is really what I do. It's maintaining, operating my building, doing planning, long-range planning, capital projects. Space planning, they look at space utilization. I won't go into that one too much. Project development and construction is also a big one. The architectural development of plans, getting the new building online, going through the design process, making sure it's meeting people's needs, scoping out the program, and then the construction process. And these are things like going out to bid, reviewing bid opening, awarding the bid. These are the steps in the process. Having weekly project construction meetings. You would also see some tools, and we have a lot of forms we use, and so we attach, well, we have the bid opening form. We have a standard contract that we use with our contractors. And so with each process, it lists a tool that we use, and it lists the people that are involved. So sometimes that's just the project manager, sometimes it's the facility manager and the project manager, sometimes it's the administrative assistant. And so we have those processes and we follow it. So everyone in the organization, the way that I run my buildings is the same way that the church office building runs its building in terms of process. Now our buildings are unique, but the process protects us, so we're always doing things the same way. And then when there's a hiccup and something happens, it's, why did that happen? It's like, well, this is how we do it. This is why it takes this long. This is why we have to have 3 bids, because that's our process, and it says we have to have 3 bids. And that protects the organization. And I've touched on this, that we also measure bids. So in the church, the controller does, sends out surveys to my customers. So he asks the administrator of LESBC, how are we doing? And that survey results, those come back, and I'm actually rated my performance. My annual salary increase is based on that performance. And we will work when we know we're measured on certain things, and those are the right things and they're the important things, then we'll be doing our best that we can at that. We also look at these things. We look at our costs for cleaning, maintenance, and construction. We track that. Depending on the size of your county and your organization, that may be worth doing, that may not be worth doing. You might do it on a very macro level. I assume all of you do that a little bit with your budgets, and you have to keep track of your budget. But if you break it down into some more components, and you track that over time, you can see if you're improving or not, being more efficient. We also look at our time. How long does it take to complete buildings? We have dates we set. I'm going to start a project by the 14th. I had money to buy chairs, 600 chairs for the college. I said I'm going to start it by February 14th. If I don't order those chairs by February 14th, I've missed the mark. And so that motivates me to get that purchase order written this week. That's just one example. And here's the performance scorecard. Again, you have it in your packet, so I won't go through it. But it shows the things that I measured on in my job. And it's weighted, so you can see what's most important. So I'm weighted heavily on my manager. He has a lot of leeway in how I'm performing. But customer surveys, whether I'm meeting those target dates or not, I'm evaluated on that. And so that helps me perform, because I know that's what's important. Capital needs analysis is something that BYU pioneered in the 80s, and it's a whole other seminar, I won't go into it, but it's a way of looking at things strategically. Everything that we have in the church is inventoried. I can look up any room in my building. You can do this on a building level if you don't want to do it on a room level, but we know what assets, we know what furniture is in the building, we know how many lights are in the building, and know how many square feet of carpet's in the building, and we have a life cycle and a replacement cost for that carpet. So I know that in 10 years, I'm going to need to spend $10,000 to replace carpet on 2 floors, for example. And we track that in a database so that we can understand that I need that kind of money later on. And the reason BYU did this is that some years they needed $12 million, and other years they needed $4 million, and other years they needed $30 million. Just rough, I have no idea if those are good numbers. But the church was saying, well, how much do we need to give you? We've got to fund BYU maintenance, and how much do we send? And so capital needs analysis helped level out those peaks and valleys. So in years that you don't need as much, you're saving that money and putting it toward another year when you need more. This is probably something you've already done and thought of to some degree. But you can really get detailed with this and put it in a computer program and project it and all of that. Again, it's just a way of thinking strategically of our long-range needs. Even if you do it for the next 3 or 5 years, what are those needs? Plan out how much money you will be needing. And they do it in 3 categories. And so every project we do, it's either we're replacing an existing component, and that's easy to get funding for. We have carpet, it wears out in 15 years, we need to replace it. That's not a hard sell, but improvements sometimes are. I need to totally redo this room and make a nice conference room, or I need to do a whole new midway at the fair park or something. Those are projects that take a lot more of a sales job. Retrofitting, you can demonstrate that I save costs. If I change out the lighting in this building, or I change into a better, more efficient cooling system, we're not replacing the whole thing, but we're adding something to it to retrofit it to make it more effective for long range. So if you show long range savings, long range value to your managers, and that will help. In conclusion, I want to talk about a few trends in facility management. These are white papers that I got through IFMA. You can purchase them on the IFMA website. And again, these are people who are doing doctorate degrees and really doing a lot of research, and so it can get these. But briefly, they illustrate a few things that are happening in facility management. I think in the public sector, we probably aren't as progressive. The church isn't even as progressive as the corporate world is. They're always trying to be way more efficient and save money. But we still want to save money. We still want to be more effective no matter where we work. But sometimes we have to be salespeople in our jobs. We have to help people understand why we're important. And for the very least, just to keep our jobs, right? That we're doing a good job, that we're saving money, that we can't operate without us. And so here's some trends. You need to show how you're relevant. This is the conversations you have on a daily basis, either with the public you serve or with administrators that you work with. How you're relevant. The services that you provide and that we all share in. And you have to be able to meet changing needs. If you have a new building being built or a new directive from government, a new law in place, you've got to be adaptive and change to meet those needs. You have to speak the right language. A lot of this gets at the corporate suite. Most of us don't sit on those kinds of boards. I certainly don't. But if you have a CFO, a CIO, CEO, those sorts of people, you need to be able to speak their language. When you're managing an entire county, they're looking at the whole bottom line, not just facilities, but everything they do. You need to be able to speak to them and help them understand the value you add and the language that they speak. And then building the future of FM, both within ourselves and others. You may have employees under you that you need to train. Someday you may be gone, and they may be the next best available candidate. As we talked about earlier, a lot of us kind of ended up in dealing with facilities. We didn't have it as a goal. But now that you're there, you need to be doing it effectively. And then when you're gone, who's going to come in after you? So make sure that you share knowledge and help others understand what you do so that they can build upon that once you leave your position. This comparison chart just shows things from the past. We're very tactical, we react. We are expected to know everything. A lot of you might be in a small enough organization that you do know everything, and you can know everything. My buildings are too big. I have 4-stage evaporative cooling systems. I kind of know that. I don't know the details about how to maintain it. We have lots of experts, thankfully, in my department that can do that, and I'm sure you do too. But you can't know everything. So what we need to be doing now is be more strategic, focusing on what we do and how we do it, knowing who to call if there's a problem. Now, you may be the best person to call, and you may know exactly what to do, and that's great. You provide a great service. But it's knowing, well, this is a little bit beyond my scope. I need to call in someone else to help with this, or I need to go get more information. So it's knowing how to be strategic in all that we do. Are there any quick questions or answers? We just have a minute or two. Yes.
I just wondered, in the church, they use a lot of free help. How do you manage free help? Technically, in the church, your job in the beginning was free help. How do you distinguish that and do it separately?
Yeah, in managing all the meeting houses throughout the country, that is, we rely upon volunteer help. And that saves a lot of money. That's hard. It takes training. It's still getting people on board to why we do it. It's meeting with leaders in local areas and explaining the program. It's a process. And some of them say, oh, we'll pay more tithing and we'll just pay more money and the church can do it because we don't want to do it. Well, then they're missing the vision. It's like, no, we want this investment in our buildings. We want people to help do that. So it's just a management of expectations. And at headquarters, thankfully, everything they're all hired. It's not free help. Those are expected to be kept at a level where volunteerism doesn't help as much, other than like the conference center. After a major event, they do have groups come in and clean that and help out with the cleaning. Roughly, there's always detailed things we have to do professionally.
The other thing that happens is there's liability with that when you get free help.
There is. So there's certain things we let people do and certain things we don't. We still post processes of how you clean, what chemicals you can use and can't, have MSDS sheets available. We still have to maintain safety for those people. Anything else? I appreciate, oh, yes.
Sorry, last question. I'm going to kind of follow up on his question a little bit here. I manage the fairgrounds and we have inmate health, which is also free health.
Great.
And one problem we've had in years past, and I hope we've got it solved, is the chemicals. You know, they can't read, well, I should say they can't, they won't read the label, they won't read instructions. So we've tried to kind of dumb down our chemicals in a way, so we have fewer available, they're non-toxic, all we can do. But when I go to help clean the chapel, I love that there is just like a cleaner. How do you choose that, and what is it, and where do I buy it?
Get with me after I connect you. That it's, I mean, they're commercial chemicals, but they may just not be labeled specifically. But it's all proxy based, so they're very safe. They're not acidic. Those are things you have to look at safety and dumbing it down is fine as long as people know you need goggles and you need gloves. You've protected them. If you want more information, you've got it here, but I'm not going to go into that detail with them.
On the flip side of what he's just saying, I've seen church members go in and clean toilets with clay. And so that's not going to clean the toilet. It's going to make it nice and slick. Not going to clean the
Never
toilet.
tried that. Training, you know, it's you have to educate people because no one's going to know as much as we are. Be aware of those issues. And so as you do your jobs, people come to you and expect you to know these things. And if we don't know them, we need to find out. That's the resource that we are. So I hope that you can see through all this that you have a lot of ability in your positions to make a difference, to make buildings be effective, to serve customers' needs, and to save money, and to do it better. And as you do that, I know that people will appreciate what you do, and you can feel a lot of value in your role in facility management. Thank you for your time today.